Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Path of Exile 2 talk. Today I'm covering a fairly wide-ranging topic. It's stuff you didn't know you could do, the tips and tricks to make the endgame experience easier in regards to really working at the true endgame, whether that's at tier 1 maps or you're all the way at +4 Pinnacle. The first thing I want you to consider is when you're buying or selling items, consider their actual value. When I was looking for bows, it was absolutely ridiculous. One of the more popular builds in the game is Lightning Deadeye, and that's what I'm running. So naturally, the items associated with this build are commonly understood, which means people that might not even be playing the build might understand what a valuable bow is or other items relevant to this build. Essentially, I believe it's causing a overpricing for items relevant to these types of builds because they're so popular and well known. So the simple trick that I like to enforce is to look for something that is at the value of a divine, but in exalts. You might find yourself messaging someone that's listed an item for 1 divine, and they just don't respond, because they don't know the true value of the item. They're seeing how many responses they get before they can gauge whether, maybe I should list this for more, or maybe it is sellable for a divine or less. What works for me much better than that then, is actually specifically searching an exalt, and then going to about 0.8% of the value of a divine, or 1.2%. The example of that is how I got this bow for 80 exalts when the adjacent kind of similar bows were listed at unbelievably 3 to 5 divines. At this exact moment as I record, the value of exalted orbs to divines is about 112 exalted orbs for 1 divine. So I bought this bow for almost a divine, but less. And I actually got a response immediately from the person who had listed it. This worked the same with the Thief's Torment Emerald Ring. This is a very important ring for the Lightning Deadeyes. Instead of giving up 2 divines, I bought this for 1.2 value of a divine, so about 120 exalts at the time, instead of paying a whole second divine of value. So it's a little trick you can think of in regards to purchasing, but it will also work for selling. If I know I've got a valuable item, but I don't know if it's going to sell for a divine, I might list it for slightly more in terms of exalts or slightly less. And that just seems to work a lot better for me, so give it a try if you haven't. On that note, I do want to comment on the fact that the value of divines seems to be steadily going up. Right now, as I'm making the video, obviously it's jumped back up to 113 from 112, but I swear, every day I see this go up from around 100 to 120. I believe it's tied to the time of day as well as the time of week. Obviously, when everyone's online at like the weekend, more people are playing. More people are generating orbs in general, whether they're exalted or divine. So the more people online, I believe the value will go down as there is more production of the things in demand. But let's say it's, middle of the week and it's late night. Less people are online, less people are producing, less things are even listed. That's when the divine orb value will actually go up, maybe over 120 and higher. Now, we can't say for sure whether it's going to continue to raise in value. That's generally the trend it's been on. The point is, if you have divine orbs, it might be worth it to convert these into exalted orbs during those slow periods when the value of a divine has gone up. When it's popular time, like the weekend at peak times, the value of the divine orb goes down. You could purchase a divine orb with your exalted orbs and come away from that exchange with an extra 20 or 30. So, pay attention, check at different times, see if there's any potential there. Next, I want to talk about crafting and just general rules that I follow to really help myself. You shouldn't be doing crafting with exalts unless you have a stack of them that you are willing to lose some of. It's like, how much are you willing to invest versus how much are you willing to get? Obviously, beginning with an orb of alchemy instead of doing the usual transmutation, augmentation, regal, then you've got to do 3 exalts. If you do an alchemy, you only have to do 2 exalts. That saves you. I do a lot of alching though, so I'm pretty low on funds for that right now. But for the sake of this video, the bases matter. What you're actually crafting on, it's up to you. For me, let's go with a dual string bow. This is one of the most valuable bows in the game because it's used in the Lightning Deadeye setup because it provides an extra arrow. It's very important for the clear. Let's use a primed quiver. This is very important for any general bow build because attack speed is so valuable because it comes with inherent attack speed. We're going to do an amulet because people want max life. I've gone for the bloodstone amulet. And we're going to do rings because these ones have the % rarity built into them, and that is incredibly valuable, as I'm sure you know. So let's just do a quick run through. So we're going to alch the dual string bow, and we have had 2 hits here. In this case then, we have got that % physical damage, we've got the flat cold, but the numbers aren't very high. The reason for that is because it sims one of them is actually a joint affix of accuracy and physical, so the roll is sort of actually capped, despite it being a tier 8, so this could have been a really high roll of physical damage if it was just physical, which sucks. Meanwhile, the cold roll is pretty low because it's only a tier 3, but it's relevant. Overall, this item can only have 6 affixes on it. 3 prefixes, 3 suffixes. So let's have a look. We have a prefix, a suffix, and a suffix. So we can get one more of each. This is PoE2DB, or Path of Exile 2 database, and is an incredible source for loads of information, including when you're crafting. Let's look up specific kinds of items. Specifically, we care about bows in this example. On a bow, this is the prefixes we can get. On a bow, this is the suffixes we can get. So we have 2 prefixes right now. We have this one specifically. We have increased physical damage and accuracy rating. And we have the flat cold. So if I add another prefix to this, it could be any of these. What I would like it to be is flat physical or another percent increase to physical, the other one. That could make a huge impact. Under that, I'd say like lightning damage or element damage with attacks would be fine. Meanwhile, for suffixes, we absolutely want the level to projectile skills as high as possible. Everything else would be just like nice utility, but the big hit would be projectile skills. We can see that our odds of actually hitting that is quite small on a suffix though. Meanwhile, your odds of hitting the prefix you want is higher because there's less to roll. So, when it comes to crafting on this bow in this way, I know that I want to find a bow that has projectile skills on it, because that's a lot rarer and harder to get through crafting. And if I started with one of those suffix rolls with projectile skill levels on it, well then it's going to be a lot more valuable to try to craft on it, because I might hit that physical increase, whether it's flat or the 2%. The odds are greater than rolling this 1 in 12 chance to hit the projectile skills. Let's see what we get. We get the lightning roll. So that's the prefix. So sadly we didn't hit physical flat or the physical percent like we wanted, but it's a pretty decent lightning roll. And then we have the last suffix roll. So we want the projectile skills. We've looked at the odds. The odds are very low. I would say this is no longer worth crafting on because we know how low the odds are. But for the sake of this video, I will. We got the flat increased dexterity. I would say this is a bow that is not that valuable because it requires level 78 to use. So people who are interested in this kind of thing are going to want something much better than this. So I will try to recoup the cost of it, and that's about as far as I'll go with it. Maybe 5 exalts, 10 exalts, and see how it sells. I'm going to be a lot quicker on these crafts now, so let's start with a quiver. This has mana, it's dexterity, doesn't have the projectile skill levels, doesn't have flat, doesn't have like percent increase to damage. I'm not too interested in this. Let's out the amulet. Here we've got percent increase to spell damage, which is nice. Big increase to armor, which is one of the least popular things. Rarity, which is nice, and this damage taken recouped as life is interesting. If only this actually got some kind of element resistance. Resistances are suffixes, so we have 1 suffix, 2, so at best we can get 1 singular resistance on this. But for the sake of it, let's see what we get. We got critical damage bonus, could be relevant for certain builds, and finally max mana. Again, not too excited by this. I'll try to recoup the cost of the 2 exalts, selling this for maybe 5 or 10. Finally, we have the 2 rings, so let's give it a go. Big increase to rarity, relevant cold res, big intelligence, and a bit of evasion. This is a good ring. It's definitely worth crafting on. We got flat cold damage. This is actually something I might consider using. I would love to see another resistance on this though. So right now we have 1, 2, we have all 3 suffixes in use. We cannot get another resistance because that's a suffix. What we could get is another prefix. Let's consult the website. So on that ring, in terms of prefixes then, we have flat cold and flat evasion. So this one right here and this one right here. Now, interestingly, you can get increased rarity of items found and increased rarity of items found as a prefix and a suffix. So we'd love to get even more rarity because people love that. But max life would also be highly valuable. Some people will appreciate mana. More flat damage could be good. I would say that there's a pretty good odd of getting something relevant here. So we might as well craft on it. We got fire damage. Not quite the big hit we were looking for, but overall a pretty decent ring. Definitely sellable for a decent amount of exalts, I would say. So yeah, I hope that live kind of showing of how I'm working out whether I want to continue crafting something and what the base is and what I'm interested in, and how I'm using the database website to educate myself in the moment. I hope that was useful. On that note, I can do a really quick one for specifically Waystones. Let's just take a Waystone and just give you that live example. So I'm going to craft on it. Ideally, as always, you alch a Waystone because it can have up to 6 modifiers on it. And so you'll start with 4 and have to exalt it less. Let's have a look what we get. Big increased rarity of items found in the area, gold found, which sucks. Monsters are armored is fine. Rare monster has an additional modifier. This is a really valuable one. But there's a general rule you can follow to tell how good something is and what the potential is. And again, it comes down to looking at their suffixes and prefixes. In general, suffixes are negative modifiers, whereas prefixes are positive. So what we have here is 1 positive, 2 positive, 3 positive, and 1 negative. So we've rolled really well here to get all 3 positive rolls on a Waystone, and only 1 negative that I am very happy to deal with. The only thing that could make this better really is if I'd removed gold found and put quantity on there instead. So I'm pretty thrilled with that, and I would not continue to craft on it because all that's going to happen is I'm going to add suffixes, and suffixes are going to be negative modifiers that make it harder. This would increase the Waystone drop chance, but personally I don't care about that right now, so it's not worth it to me. For the sake of it, let me give you a different example. We have a blue Waystone with just 1 modifier on it, and that's definitely a suffix because it's a negative. They're evasive. So let's give it another one and see what happens. Increased amount of rare chests, not the best. That's obviously a prefix because it's positive. Take a regal orb and make it rare. There is now shock ground, so that's a negative, so that's a suffix. So let's say I'm going to consider exalting this. I've got 2 negatives and 1 positive. I have a chance to add a negative, but a bigger chance to add a positive, so let's try that. We've now got a 3rd negative. So the only thing that I can add to this is prefixes, which is only good. So I can only add good to this now. This is why it's worth it. Increase magic monsters, sure. Increase rarity, awesome. We've recovered this into something that's good. So yeah, that's the general rule that I follow. Unless I'm going to max it out and then Val orbit, to RNG these rolls, maybe turn some of the negatives into positives, greatly change these numbers, maybe try to hit a tier 16. But in this case, I wouldn't because I'm happy with both of these. Now let's talk about running high level content and how that results in better drops. But the question is, what does that actually mean? It means you can get drops otherwise not possible, such as level 19 and even rarer level 20 skill gems, which are very valuable. But higher level enemies also give you the potential of higher tier item drops, which basically just means they have higher potential on the tiers of affixes they get. Let's say you drop an item that's tier 3, and it rolls maximum life. That maximum life number is going to be significantly higher than a normal item that isn't like a higher tier item. So these become great bases to craft onto. Imagine I get one of those dual string bows to drop and it's a higher tier item and it rolls that % physical increase that I'm looking for at a really high number. That would be very sellable. Another great example of that would be to do with a caster weapon, the wands. There's 2 in specific that come up a lot. It's attuned ones like these and siphoning ones like this one. What people are looking for on this is plus level to all lightning spell skills and then everything else that's relevant. Increasing spell damage, lightning damage, intelligence, mana, cast speed, that kind of thing. But they want that big increase to lightning spell skills, as you can see. Here's an example of Josh using a lightning essence to guarantee a lightning modifier on these base ones. In this case, he gets incredibly lucky and does get the perfect +5 to lightning skills, so crafts on it hard and sells it for a couple divines. What's interesting about these wands is that they come with a skill. That skill is level 18 if the required level for the wand is level 78. But let's say you're killing higher level enemies at level 81 plus. The wands could drop at a required level of 81 at that point, couldn't they? And so the level of the skill on the wand will be 19 instead of 18, making it more valuable. People buy those wands even in normal white quality if they're 81 required level for that reason. They've got more potential on them for crafting purposes. So if you don't want to RNG roll like crafting it yourself, you could just sell the white ones at required level 78 and certainly at required level 81 without risking your resources at all. So again, those are siphoning ones and attuned ones, look out for them. But let's do a fast rundown of how you actually achieve level 81 plus enemies for that purpose. Firstly, you can just take a Waystone at tier 15 and see that the monster level at this point will be level 79. Very quickly, you can find an irradiated map, which +1 to monster level, so instead of being 79, it's now level 80. But that's not quite 81 like we want. So here's an example of corruption and irradiation on one node. They each add +1 level. So 79 tier 15 +1 is 80, +1 again from corruption is 81. That would be a level 81 map with a tier 15. Alternatively, you could go ahead and corrupt a load of your tier 15 Waystones, maybe hit like a tier 16, that would add a level. So if you put a tier 16 into this, it wouldn't be 80, but it'd be 81. The other thing to be aware of is the boss atlas skill tree. As you go up, you get to add +1 boss difficulty. Be aware that this caps out at 4, though you can get more on the tree. So basically you're adding levels to bosses through this, and that can be a way to force bosses to be 81 or higher very easily by progressing this tree. What's really nice about this tree is that it forces maps with map bosses to be irradiated, so guarantee +1 level to all monsters. And over here, you have that 30% chance that it also has a corruption, which will be +2 to all monster level. Pretty incredible stuff. On that note, instead of doing mapping to achieve that, you could consider doing the trials. Take a look at this coin for the Trial of Secumus, aka Sanctum. Area level 80, number of trials 4. So this trial starts at level 80 on the first floor, but actually on the second floor it goes up to 81, and then 82, and then 83 on the final level. All for a coin that ultimately will cost 1 exalt on the trade website right now. Basically, if you want to hunt 81 plus enemies with minimal investment, the trials are actually one of, if not the best way to do that with the minimal investment behind it. If you're strong enough to actually do this, I really recommend it. The drops and value in there is really good, such as the unique jewels you can get, lots of jewels from the chests in general, obviously the monster drops and the currency drops. And then you got a Pinnacle boss at the end too, so tons of value there without having to set up all the maps and towers and tablets and everything to maximize the value. And extra bonus is you don't actually have to have killed any Pinnacle bosses before it's valuable, unlike say the special activity content like Breach and so on. So yes, the trials are actually really valuable. Now, as a quick rundown of something I talked about recently, when you put a tablet into a tower, it affects the nearby nodes, right? So if I put a breach into this, say 10 maps nearby are going to be hit by breach. So it picks this one, it picked this one, it picked this one, that one. It also hit this one, it hit this one, that, and just barely that. Or whatever, right? Just as an example. What you can do is you can cull the maps around to prevent them hitting maps you don't want. For example, I want Breach to hit this map because it's corrupted. They'll be higher level, higher value. But I also want Breach to hit this map because it's a savannah, which is obviously a really valuable map for Breach because it's open rather than corridors and awkward and backtracky. It's going to be easy to get value out of this map on a Breach. I do not want it to hit certain maps, like Crypt, maybe not. Like, say, Sump, maybe not. Or Fortress, maybe not. So what you can do is complete the maps. See how it's green? If you complete a map before you put the tablet in the next to it tower, it cannot be affected by the breach. So it's physically impossible to be affected by a breach tablet this node. So instead it hit this one, it hit this one, it hit this one. Because this is impossible, impossible, impossible. Alternative to that, did you know that map attempted also works the same way? So instead of having to clear the map, you could just attempt it. The fastest way to attempt a map is go in and die, but you don't want to lose the XP, I'm sure, so there is an alternative method. Very simply, all you do is put a Waystone into that map. It could even be a tier 1, and then you never even enter the map. Instead, you find a different map anywhere on the atlas and put a Waystone into that. That will take the first map that you set up and delete it as if you died on it, now showing map attempted. So as long as you've got one more map you're willing to dud, you can dud any map super quick that's next to you without having to full clear it so it shows up as complete. This allows you to completely cull the atlas map and greatly improve the odds, or even guarantee if you're willing to go that hard, which maps get the modifiers you want. In case you didn't know, I will say though, stacking tablet effects, event mods, Breach is generally the best one, Waystone affixes, distilled emotions onto the Waystones, and all on say a boss node that has the benefits from the Atlas skill tree. This is the most impactful way to set up a map. It's vital to know that quantity is generally valued more than rarity, but those are the two you care most about. Obviously you want both, but quantity is better than rarity because more drops equals more dice rolls. You can always get % rarity on the gear that you're wearing, on the Waystone, force it using distilled emotions, maybe even the tablets. But quantity is simply more potent, but slightly harder to get, so just value it very highly. If you're running currency or running specific maps, there's also a very simple change you can make to your Atlas tree to gain value. But you gotta be careful with it. It's this node here, local knowledge. Swamp and water biome maps have 40% increased chance to drop basic currency. That's a huge increase if you're about to run a swamp or water biome. So all I'd need to do if I wanted to do that, let's say I'm about to do one of those types of maps, I would go to Refund Atlas Passives, take off this, put this on, and I'd be ready to go. But you gotta be careful here because I definitely don't want to increase the chance to drop gold on mountain biome or like the, coins for the trials, even socket currency I wouldn't want. This is going to greatly increase the odds of these things dropping and thereby reduce the chance of other things. Currency is incredibly valuable, so I'd always want to run this on a swamp and water biome. You could argue that on a forest biome, having increased jewel drops isn't bad either, but at the cost of everything, it's debatable. So I would just say, if you're going to do a swamp or water, maybe forest, just respec into local knowledge before you do it. Then make sure you unspec that and go back to normal before you continue, because obviously it can backfire, but it's a really valuable trick to know. Next, let's just quickly talk about the special activities you can do, such as Delirium, Breach, and so on. We feel that Breach is the clear beginner winner for the 4 endgame activities in this current version, simply because you get so much mob density and it doesn't slow you down at all. There's going to be loads of rares, which means great drops. Just compared to the other 3, it's instantly so impactful, so we recommend you use all your tower tablets to generate more breaches and ideally irradiate them as a general rule. On that note, here's what we think you should do in terms of the breach at the skill tree order. Always start with crumbling walls because it's going to massively increase the odds that you get multiple breaches in one breach run, which is really valuable. Then you go into frantic invasion because you're going to increase the splinter drop rate so you can do the next pinnacle faster. Behind that is rising pyre for even more density and value. And then the last points could go into, say, grasping hands on the left for more value, or sustained siege on the right to make the process smoother and also safer. But if you find yourself farming pinnacle materials for breach or otherwise slow as hell because you've got 0 pinnacle points to start with, it's actually a good idea to run high level content to get drops and currency, and then just purchase the item that you want to face whatever pinnacle boss, be that, breach shards or otherwise. The problem here is that farming the summoning items for yourself before you have any pinnacle points, it's just so much slower and miserable compared to how hilariously effective it is post pinnacle points. We're hoping for a rebalancing of this, at least I am. But yeah, I think that doing 80 plus content on maps, or even say the 2 trials like I mentioned, they're great value. You could get currency and drops you sell, which then generates funds that you directly just buy a breach stone with to go do the pinnacle, claim the points, and even with just crumbling walls for the breach, there's so much more potential for farming the splinters and getting to that second boss attempt sooner. It's just that first pinnacle attempt that's so painfully slow, and so, going about it indirectly might be best. But yeah, I've been talking quite a while. Those are just a bunch of things that I've been learning and doing and applying over the last week or so of engaging with the later endgame. And I just hope some of that was new or useful to you. If you guys have anything to add to these topics or maybe an extra tip, let us know in the comments. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.